If you think fame is an overnight achievement, then this list will seriously bother you, because these actors showed us that sometimes success comes late. For the people on this list, before Hollywood even called them legends, they were radar technicians, postal workers, bartenders, soldiers, painters, and cab drivers. One of them drove to California with two pistols and a bucket of fried chicken. One survived an accident that doctors say actually saved his life. One walked away from fame to run a clothing store. And one built an empire without fame. And the seventh one? Let's just say you're not ready for that story, but let's start with Morgan Freeman. Hollywood ignored them before applauding for them. 15. Morgan Freeman. Here's the thing that shocks me about Morgan Freeman. The man is one of the most recognizable voices on the entire planet. He literally played God on screen, and yet before any of that happened, he was sitting in an Air Force radar station in the late 1950s, having turned down a drama scholarship to enlist. See, Morgan wanted to be a fighter pilot, but unfortunately for him, that dream did not work out as well as he had planned. Though what he ended up doing became much more extraordinary. But most people don't know that he didn't become a star till his late 50s. Since then, Morgan has won an Oscar for Million Dollar Baby and is recognized as one of the oldest black actors still alive. 14. Bill Cosby. When it comes to Bill Cosby's story, I can't always tell if it's painful or complicated. Before he experienced the major controversy that would define his life, Bill had an amazing career. He served in the U.S. Navy as a hospital corpsman, worked as a bartender in Philadelphia, and was at one point planning to become a physical education teacher. Then comedy happened, then The Cosby Show happened. He thrived in this industry and built something that people still enjoy to this date. 13. Hal Williams. The story of Hal Williams is the kind of story that makes you want to close your laptop and go do the thing you keep putting off. But stay with me till the end, because he does something so shocking that it will interest you. In 1968, this Columbus, Ohio man packed two pistols and a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken into his Pontiac Bonneville, told almost nobody, and drove alone to Hollywood, giving himself 3 years to make it or go home. Within 4 years, Hal had recurring roles simultaneously on Sanford and Son, Harry O, and The Waltons. You won't be wrong to say that he is one of the steadiest black actors over 80 years old in Hollywood history. 12. Robert Hooks. Imagine being told that there is no room for black performers and you decided to build an entire new room. That is what Robert Hooks did. He was born as Bobby Dean Hooks in the segregated Foggy Bottom neighborhood of Washington, D.C., and he co-founded the Negro Ensemble Company in 1967 with a $1.3 million Ford Foundation grant, and went on to help launch the careers of Denzel Washington, Samuel L. Jackson, Angela Bassett, and Lawrence Fishburne, among others. But here is what baffles me with this black legend. He was never chasing stardom. He was simply building infrastructure. He only cared about helping other artists achieve their dreams. But if you think that what Robert has achieved in his life is much, just wait till you see what Al Freeman has done. 11. Billy Cobbs. How did Bill Cobbs move from having no real acting training and no connections to becoming a legendary black actor? Well, it all started when he spent 8 years in the Air Force as a radar technician. Bill eventually worked at IBM, sold cars in Cleveland, and then when he was 36 years old, he left all of that and moved to New York City to become an actor. When he got to New York, he drove a cab to survive, repaired office equipment, and sold toys. But today, he is one of the most legendary black actors in film history. He has appeared in 150 films and television shows, and he won a Daytime Emmy in 2020 at age 85. They wanted them to endure. Instead, they survived. 10. J.A. Preston. J.A. Preston is 92 years old, but I bet that there is a decent chance you have seen his face 100 times without ever knowing his full name. Before he came, he served in the U.S. Army after winning a track scholarship. But after that, he built a stage career in New York long before Hollywood came calling. J.A. Preston is probably one of the oldest black actors still alive, with roles in Hill Street Blues, Dallas, Santa Barbara, Air Force One, and most memorably, as the presiding judge in A Few Good Men. 9. Ben Vereen. Do you think Ben Vereen is still standing because he is on drugs? Maybe not, but he is one of those rare performers. And he has been strong for so long that it still takes people's breath away, and they wonder how he is doing it. I know you may be confused, but after you hear what he has been through, you will also be eager to know how he is still standing. See, Ben lost his teenage daughter in a car accident in 1987. And then, in 1992, in a single day, his car hit a tree. And then, he suffered a stroke while walking on Pacific Coast Highway and was then struck by a vehicle driven by record producer David Foster. But the ironic part of all of these is that the accident actually saved his life because doctors discovered a 6-hour-old brain bleed that would have killed him by morning. 8. Al Freeman Jr. Al did not just act. He taught, directed, and dare I say, shaped the next generation of Black storytellers. The most surprising fact is that he did all of these from a classroom at Howard University. But what most people don't know is that before he had all this fame, he actually served in the Air Force during the Korean War. He also studied acting at Los Angeles City College and eventually moved to New York, where he built a distinguished stage and screen career. Al is probably one of the oldest Black actors to balance Hollywood and academia so perfectly. Think about that. The man is not just a superstar, he is kind of a need. You may think he is the greatest Black actor, but just wait till you hear all that a 93-year-old woman has accomplished. 7. Marla Gibbs. Would you still be working when you turn 93 years old? Maybe not, but Marla Gibbs still is. Yep, let that settle in for a moment. But before she fell so madly in love with her career, she was a reservations clerk at United Airlines. And when the Jeffersons came along in 1975, she was so unsure it would last that she kept her airline job for 2 full years, working nights at the airline and filming during the day. Fast forward a few decades, and she has 5 Emmy nominations. She has even received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2021 at the age of 90. She may be 93, but Marla Gibbs is not slowing down for anyone. 6. Marlene Clark. Have you ever heard of Marlene Clark? Well, she is one of those names that is not said enough. Marlene grew up in Harlem, and she worked as a fashion model, studied speech at City College of New York, and quietly built a film career throughout the 1970s that made her a cult icon. And get this, she was once married to Billy D. Williams. But then Marlene did something that shocked everyone, something you would never guess. In the midst of all that fame and success, she stepped away from acting and went to open a clothing store on Melrose Avenue and spent 15 years managing one of the most celebrated restaurant scenes in Los Angeles. Many say she made the wrong decision. What do you think? They weren't the industry's first choice, but they still became unforgettable. 5. Danny Glover. This one thing gets overlooked every single time someone brings up Danny Glover. Before Roger Murtaugh, before any of it, this man had epilepsy and was having seizures well into his adult years. Danny grew up in San Francisco, but he did not fully commit to acting until his late 20s. He went on to become a UN Goodwill Ambassador and was given a chieftaincy title in Imo State, Nigeria. He isn't just a Black legend, but greatness at its peak. 4. Billy D. Williams. How would you feel if you found out that Billy did not choose acting? Well, I was gutted when I found out. Turns out all he needed was money to buy paint, and acting found him while he was searching. Billy grew up in Harlem with a twin sister and was raised by his grandmother while his parents worked multiple jobs. Fortunately for him, he won a scholarship to the National Academy of Fine Arts and Design to study classical painting. He took on acting jobs just because he wanted to cover his art supplies. But 5 decades later, he is Lando Calrissian, one of the most iconic characters in the history of cinema. Now at 87, he remains one of the most fascinating, oldest Black actors still alive. Painter, philosopher, and screen legend all at once. 3. Leslie Uggams, 6 years old. That is how old Leslie Uggams was when she made her professional debut. And from that point forward, she never really stopped. Leslie's mother danced at the Cotton Club, and Leslie was performing at the Apollo Theater alongside Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong before she was old enough for middle school. She became the first Black woman to host a weekly national television variety show, The Leslie Uggams Show on CBS in 1969. At 81 years old, Leslie Uggams is, without doubt, one of the oldest legendary Black actors still actively working in Hollywood, and she is still booking the big ones. 2. Garrett Morris. Did you know that before Garrett Morris was making America laugh on Saturday Night Live, he was a Juilliard-trained classical singer from New Orleans? He even served in the Army as an X-ray technician. But all that changed when Lorne Michaels hired him for SNL in 1975. Garrett Morris became the first black cast member in the show's history and the oldest in the original ensemble by over a decade. At 88, Morris is one of the oldest black actors still alive from that original era of Black Hollywood. The next person on the list has a story that is going to shock you. 1. Fred Williamson. Did you know that the famous Fred Williamson has a degree in architectural engineering, which he earned from Northwestern University? He has also played 9 seasons of professional football across the NFL and AFL, but then he did something totally shocking. One day, he just walked into Hollywood and became one of the most recognizable faces in the history of black cinema. He transitioned into acting in the early 1970s and became one of the biggest action stars of the blaxploitation era. He built everything himself on his own terms. Before I go, I have a question. If their lives had stopped at 30 or 40, would we even know their names? And here's what I'm really curious about. Which turning point changed everything for you? And what are you still postponing that might define your entire story? Drop your answers in the comment and don't forget to subscribe.